Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and we're here with the one and only Doug Lancio today. Doug's been in Nashville for 40 years. His first band was the Questionnaires, and they were signed by EMI when he was fresh out of high school. That band turned into Bedlam and Jay Joyce was another guitar player on there, and Jay turned out to become a very successful producer in Nashville. Doug left that band and he was playing with various people, including a long stint with Todd Snyder in Americana music and Matthew Ryan before he hooked up with Nancy Griffith and the Blue Moon Orchestra. Highlights with them include playing with and touring with the Crickets and recording a record with the London Symphony Orchestra at Abbey Road Studio A, which must have been an awesome experience. Doug then met Patti Griffin, who's a two-time Grammy winner for Americana and Gospel, and he played with her for close to 16 years. He also produced her record, 1,000 Kisses, which was nominated for a Grammy and recorded at Doug's studio. Following a stint of making a record with her and with Matthew Ryan at Kingsway, which was Daniel Lanois' old digs up in New Orleans, he started a studio He started a studio in East Nashville with Patti, and he was working on making another record with her when she got involved with Robert Plant, and that was put on hold. This led to Doug playing and recording several records and tours with John Hiatt, including producing, recording, and mixing one of John's records, Terms of My Surrender, that was also nominated for a Grammy. So you're seeing the formula here. You get Doug on your record, you get a Grammy, or at least you get a real good record. Most recently, he's got a few great stories about playing with Tom Jones on and off as his American band over the last few years. We'll talk about that a little bit today, as well as tracking a second guitar on Joe Bonamassa's new record that's going to be released. Mike Ferris's new recording for Compass Records as well. He's co-produced, mixed, and played on Mandy Barnett Records on 30 Tigers release in September. Also, Strange Angels record, which is a tribute to Elmore James, and other guests on that included Keb Mo, Warren Haynes, Billy Gibbons, and Rodney Crowell. And Doug played guitar and got some great reviews out of that. He also just released Gretchen Peters' new record, Dancing with the Beast. He produced and recorded her last 4 or 5 records, of which the last release, Hello Crew World, won a UK Americana Record of the Year, as well as Matthew Ryan's new record, Hustle Up Starlings. He's also got a cool story about playing with Bruce Springsteen and E Street Band with No Nils Lofgren and No Little Steven for a 9/11 tribute show. And he's also one of the sweetest, most mellow, nice guys that you'll want to meet. Doug, thanks so much for your time, man. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, thank you, Craig. Nice introduction.
A quick question I just thought is, do women still throw their panties at Tom Jones like they used to on when we were kids?
Unfortunately, they do.
You're kidding me.
No.
What?
I think it's a strictly American thing, but yeah, man, they line up. It's like they do. You see them coming.
That's amazing.
They their purse, and come up and throw a pair of panties on stage. It's pretty righteously ignored.
My mother-in-law is 84, and whenever they mention Tom Jones, and she's from the UK, she was always like, "Oh, I love him. I used to listen to all his records." It's like he's like a magnet.
That guy is impeccable. He's really out of this world. And and I think it's a strange thing because I think the American market still has him kind of stuck in the 70s, stuck in his heyday, pre-Las Vegas stuff. But if you check out his current records now, his last 3 records with, actually they're being made by Ethan Johns. And Ethan plays guitar, and I think Andy Fairweather Lowe is the other guitar player on a lot of that stuff. Just a 4-piece band, 5-piece band, in a room, live. And that guy could be 26 years old. They're fabulous records. Great songs, great song selection, just great performances, great sound. They really are wonderful records. And they're, I don't think that they really work the American market so much. They come over here and play. But I think the rest of the world, he's kind of given, this is my opinion, he's kind of given more the respect that he deserves.
Yeah.
He's kind of looked at as the voice, but he's like Sinatra or Tony Bennett or something in the rest of the world. And for some reason in America, he's kind of stuck with the What's New Pussycat underwear throwing thing.
Yeah.
But check out his last 3 records, his last record or any of the 2 preceding that. They're unbelievable records. They're really great.
Was Shem Von Schreck on your tour?
No, sir.
He's a bass player because he told me the exact same thing. He toured with Tom for a year and he goes, and Shem's like, I don't know, probably 50 something. And he said he couldn't, and he's in great shape. He said he can barely keep up with him. Exact same thing you said. He said he's a real powerhouse.
And I've seen, I saw him, we were doing, American promotion tours. So it was like, there was radio at 6 a.m. There was an in-store or something. There was a sound check. There was a show, and then there was a 6 a.m. radio thing. The guy never batted an eye. And he opens his voice, and he just loves to sing, and it's immaculate.
That's so cool, man.
First time I rehearsed with him, man, went to L.A., and walked into a room, and there I was all set up, ready to sing, just jump right in. But we played Green, Green Grass at Home 3 times in a row. And he sang it like it was the first time he sang it in 1965. Sweat and just giving it. Never, I kept waiting for like, okay, all right, you got the second verse, whatever. Just giving it. And he would have done it all day.
Wow. So he just lives to do this.
He does. He lives to sing, and it shows, He's a true singer.
How did you get hooked up with him?
Man, I don't even remember. I know it was through my friend Marco Gibbino, who was the band leader. He's a drummer. And he was playing with Robert Plant's band. I actually hooked him up with Patti Griffin's band for a while. I kind of stole him from Buddy Miller, but he lived down the street from me. I knew him because he came over. The first time I met him was to mix his wife's record. And we hit it off and played on various things together and stuff. But he had called and asked me about the Tom Jones things. And I'm sure I said, yeah, man, that sounds great. But didn't give it another thought. It was like, well, yeah, that's not going to happen, Tom Jones? Really? But it did. I don't remember what the first thing we did was, like a 2-week promotion tour where it had shows in New York and Los Angeles, and there was television. We did the Tonight Show, and that was on. And then I ended up doing that kind of thing for the next couple of records.
So you toured all over the world?
No, just when they would come to the States.
Okay, just as an American band.
It was an American band. It's a really interesting story. His only son, manages him, and he knows music. He's kind of the music guy, and he was actually responsible for hooking him up with his MTV resurgence. When he came out, what did he do? He did the Prince song, Kiss. With Art of Noise, right? And that was like MTV, and it was kind of like Tom getting out of Vegas where he was stuck. And that was his son. That was one of the first thing he did as his manager, because he had his manager before that goes all the way back to when he was 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
And this guy had written It's Not Unusual.
The manager?
Yes, and he was writing It's Not Unusual to pitch to some girl that was making some waves out of England. I can't remember her name. But he wanted to get this song pitched to this girl. And Tom kept saying, well, that's, give me that song when you're done with it. I mean, he hadn't written it yet. He just sat around playing that hook. And so we had Tom sing the demo to pitch to the girl, and the girl said, whoever's singing that song, that's his song.
Wow, that's pretty honorable.
It seemed like it happened really quick because they released that. That's the demo.
That's the demo.
It's the demo. And it was like whatever.
Wow.
It took, 5 weeks later, he was on a plane to the United States.
Holy cow.
Ed Sullivan or whatever, but he had a hit. And that's what got it going. And he was with that manager up until the point that his son took over.
Now, he's also been supposedly married to the same woman for like all these years as well. Is that correct?
Yes. And unfortunately, she passed away.
Oh, man, that's so sorry.
That's what stopped my stint of getting to work with him.
Wow.
Because I've heard him say again and again in the press that would be the only reason he would stop singing. Because everybody wants to know, you're 70 whatever years old.
Sure.
And he would say it was my wife, his muse, and that would be the only reason he would stop singing. So when we got the news, we actually had a tour lined up where we'd be opening for Van Morrison at the Hollywood Bowl. It was just like, something really to look forward to in the fall. And it just kind of stopped. Fortunately, he did start to play again. So they've been out and playing, but he has a UK band that I believe Robbie McIntosh is in that band playing guitar.
Right.
And I think it was just probably for whatever reasons, it was probably more of a family thing to not, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But they did like the band that ultimately became Marco and myself and Victor Krause playing bass, and we had a couple of different great keyboard players, and but it's documented. We did a Chicago soundstage thing that came out that's really good, and yeah, if anybody wants to look that up, there's a performance that I'm kind of proud of Kiss that we worked up. We didn't even work it up. That was what was good about it. Because when we were playing in the States, there was a conscious effort to not play any of the hits, any of the Vegas stuff. It was like, let's concentrate on this record.
On the new record that he had at the time. Yeah.
Do these blues songs, these gospel songs, these country songs. And just give this people. It was like a return to his roots, really, of singing in the clubs.
Well, he's like correct me. Isn't his dad or something was a coal miner or something? He used to be a coal miner or something.
He lived in a little town in Wales, and I read his biography. So
just like some very blue collar.
Yeah,
he's a very humble guy. He comes from extremely, meager background.
He was, him and his wife were married when they were like 17 years old. He was 17. And she got pregnant.
That's amazing.
The whole family had to try and figure out what to do about this. So they were living with their parents, and she had the baby, and he would go and eventually kind of moved in with her family and wanted to get married and take care of the baby, And like I said, he had a hit, came to the States and kind of blew up, right?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
He had his own television show and all that stuff, that whole start of his career, it's really an amazing story.
And it sounds like in his case, it's well deserved because he was just a good person.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You get a chance to go see him, man. Or just listen to those records. They're live.
I just put that down and highlighted it, man. I'm going to definitely check them out.
We'll do it at 6 a.m.
I try not to do much at 6 a.m., Doug.
Right?
Hey, so what made you move to Nashville, and what were you doing career-wise before you got there?
Yeah, well, I was 12 years old.
Okay.
I moved here with my family. Yeah, my dad was in advertising.
Mad Men.
Yeah, something like that. I think. Yeah.
And go ahead. Sorry.
We were in Cincinnati, Ohio, before that for a couple of years, but originally from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. That's where my folks are from. But yeah, I was about 12 when we moved to Nashville, and I hadn't really taken up the guitar yet. Although I had taken some lessons from a nun. I do remember that.
That's interesting. That's a first in 300 interviews.
My mother wanted us in Catholic school. And
that's a very Northeastern thing.
It is.
Because I'm from up there, and a lot of my buddies went to Catholic school.
We had CCD classes on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Right? So, but one of the things that I do remember about that, one of the good things was taking guitar lessons from a nun that I had a crush on.
Nice.
I remember that. She wasn't a habit-wearing nun. She was a younger nun with like a 12-string, and literally like teaching me Kumbaya.
Doug, I'm getting turned on here. What the hell's going on? What's wrong with me?
I think I used to just sit there, like stare at her, drool a little bit. You take your guitar to school book with the D-U-D-D-U-U, down, down, up, down, up. Rhythm printed on it,
Oh my God. This has got to be morally wrong that we're even talking about this, I'm sure.
Down, down, up, down, up. I don't think I've progressed much from it.
That's wild, man, that you started taking lessons from a nun. So when you came here, did you look for a local nun to like?
I didn't keep up with it until I moved to Nashville, and then I really didn't like it.
Really?
At 12 years old, I was in a little bit of a culture shock. It was too hot.
Oh, yeah.
We're spaced too far apart. I didn't understand a lot of the dialect, to tell you the truth. I had a science teacher whose name was Rucker. He said, "My name's Rucker. It's spelled Aura, U-C-K-E, Aura." I was like, what is he saying?
Oh, my God.
So in the beginning, it was culture shock.
Sure, man. I can understand that.
And I think at some point, it was my mother that was like, "You should take guitar lessons. We're in Nashville, Tennessee. You should take guitar lessons." She was trying to kind of help me acclimate, I think.
Yeah.
And I was into that. So I started taking from a guy locally down the street that had a little, and he had worked at Gibson Guitars. His name was Elson Smith. Wow, that's a name from the past. But it was kind of like starting from scratch from him, And then later I pretty much took it from there after going over the basics, And then I did have a guy that was really cool situation that I remember that he would come to my house, and the lesson would consist of me playing him a record and him figuring out the song in front of me. By the time he had the song figured out, I'd been watching him, kind of had to go, the lesson was over, But it was like I remember learning Roxanne by the Police.
Great song.
And he figured out those chords, and I remember going, there's no way in hell I would have ever been able to do that. There's a major 7 chord in there, there's just like, and all I heard was chick, 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 chick. I could, there was no way I was going to be able to pick voicings at the time.
And did that help you acclimate or get used or feel more at home?
Yeah, man. Like I'm sure a lot of your guys you talk to on here, it's like once it took over, it took over.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing. I'd come home from school and go to the bedroom with the guitar. And, I'd be interrupted by my mother wanting me to eat dinner or something, but then I was back to it.
Yeah. What was your first guitar?
Well, my first electric guitar was a Vantage. which is like it was Japanese, but they were good-looking guitars. I don't know if you ever heard of Vantage.
I have not.
Don't see them around much, but there was a Schuff's music store. The only music store around at that time was in Franklin, and they carried these things. They also carried Fenders, but why I didn't want the Mustang, I wanted the Vantage. They were just better looking to me.
Yeah.
I bought a lot for many years. I bought guitars based on the aesthetics of the guitar.
Well, you have to kind of like, you can't play something that just feels ugly. I mean,
yeah, and I wasn't hip. I wasn't hip to what, I still struggle with that, what really compromises the tone that's really going to help you out,
Yeah.
Wood, what the good woods are and stuff. And,
most guys I talk to, that's what they say. The number one is the wood, but then you have to know about, you have to be a gearhead. You have to know, okay, well, I like ash, I like maple top.
And then you have to start knowing the year and the region the tree came from.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like one thing with the new guitars is like, you have to wait until that thing forgets it's a tree.
Right. And you got to be really into it to know that.
What it is, and what part of the tree it was cut from.
You got to be really into it.
But then as you learn, there's like, there's some guidelines, whatever that is, whatever, pre-66 Fenders, you can't go wrong, that kind of thing. Those kind of little guidelines that you kind of learn as you go, I didn't have any of that kind of knowledge going on whatsoever with guitars. So I have a lot of guitars, but no real gems.
I don't believe that.
A few.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, the Questionnaires, that was your first, you got signed with them. They were a solid alternative band in like the late 80s. And I was curious how you wound up connecting with them and what happened. Because like I did some research. You guys opened for some big acts like the Romantics, Bow Wow Wow. Those are big acts, national acts.
Yeah, it was a big deal to me. It was a big deal for us at the time, especially, because I was still in high school, and I remember, missing days of school. I'd have to miss a Friday or a Monday because we were opening for X, and had to be in Atlanta or something on Friday night. So it was very cool of my parents, and it was a big deal for me. And again, it was like that thing of going, I knew what I was going to do before I was out of high school. I knew there would be no college courses required.
Yeah.
Although I ended up going to Belmont because back then
you do not seem like a Belmont student, Doug. I have to tell you.
I would audit classes. So for $150, you could take an engineering class, and at the end of that class, you would get 10 hours of studio time to complete a project.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and this is back in the day when Belmont just had a little basement studio with tape machine. Now they own.
Oh yeah.
But back then it was just a little studio on campus in a basement, and you could take there was a couple different engineering classes that you could take. There was actually, then it became available a production class. All of these, I took whatever classes had the studio time at the end of it to do the project.
Because that paid for itself.
10 hours of studio time. Yeah, you had to buy a roll of tape.
Great.
Then again, it's not getting any kind of credits or anything like that. So I was just that was why I did that, that and wanting to learn about
it.
That
was pretty smart. Very smart, actually. Because 10 hours of studio time alone would have cost you a lot more than $150.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was really clever. Good man.
Back in the day when it wasn't, it wasn't really easily accessible to work in a studio.
Yeah. So talk about the Questionnaires and what happened to them. What happened? You left, I guess, or turned into Bedlam?
I ended up, it was like there was a guy, Tom Littlefield, and he was a great songwriter, and he's still around. and still writing songs, and he had a band, and I was friends with the drummer and the guitar player, and I used to go watch him. And I had joined really the only band in my little town. Kind of got my spot playing guitar with them, and I was doing that. And we were, a cover band. We were high school kids and trying to do whatever. And man, I'll tell you, I remember going to see REM. I was probably 15, maybe 14 years old, and saw them on Vandy's campus at the Surratt. And the next day, after seeing that band, I wrote 12 songs.
Wow. Talk about inspiration. That must have been in their very early years, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was inspiring in a way of like seeing this thing work that I went, I could do that.
Holy crap.
It was probably a lot like seeing, like you hear people say that about the Sex Pistols or whatever. With some sort of inspiration that was like, I can do that. And I think a big part, and I just loved them, and I was vulnerable. It was like, they changed, my mind about a lot of stuff just by seeing them. And
they put on I saw them in concert. They put on a great show. I mean, just
they were great. And it was just like, but it was the thing about all four of the pieces working together that was like, made up this whole. And it just moved me. It touched me. And it was before he was pronouncing any words. I think that had a lot to do.
That's pretty funny. He was notorious for that.
Not a word had he pronounced. And I loved that. I loved it. And, but I also think that was part of, it was like, oh, well, again, I could do that, so all of a sudden it was like, okay, well, these words don't really, they're not as, they're just another piece of the puzzle, and I think that concept was like, it certainly is what allowed me to write 12 songs, take them to the band I was in, change the name of the band, and go, we're playing all original music. Because at that time, in order to play in the local rock club, which there was Cantrell's and there was Frankenstein's before that, but I knew Cantrell's, and it was like, in order to get in there, it was back in the day where they touted, well, we only play all original music in this club, so it was like, okay, well, we'll write songs then, and I did that, but Tom Littlefield had a band going, and I was watching him from the sides. I was watching that band. I really loved what they were doing, and I loved his songs. And I was at a replacement show at Cantrell's, and I was standing behind my friend who was playing guitar for him. And the next thing I know, Tom turned on the guitar player and punched him out.
What?
He got on top of him and just punched him out.
Like on stage?
No. We were watching.
Just from the audience. Okay.
From the audience, standing behind him, saw him take him down.
I thought that only happens in New York.
There was a scuffle ensued. No. And he took him out, and it was like, shortly thereafter turned to me and said, you want to be my guitar player? And it was like, well, of course. Who doesn't want that gig?
Depends, as long as that's not initiation.
Exactly. And it kind of was, it kind of was.
That's wild.
But,
and that was Bedlam.
No, sir. That was the Questionnaires.
Okay. That became the Questionnaires. Okay.
Yeah. That's the Questionnaires.
And you performed your original material.
Well, see, that's the thing. Tom was a really good songwriter. He was actually a songwriter, and he was actually really into the craft of it, very into the craft of it. And he used to actually make me come to his house after school and stuff and write songs with him. And I didn't really like it.
Why?
It was a chore to me. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to sit around. It was like doing crossword puzzles or something, but he was very particular about the craft of it. And he wrote some really good songs, It was anyway, on one hand, that's where I learned a lot about arranging and crafting a song. Tom was Woody Herman's grandson. I mean,
that's interesting.
He's a serious dude. And yeah. So anyway, man, boy, this is a lot of past. This is when I do feel like I need to lay down on a couch. I'm gonna take for a walk though for more coffee.
Feel free, man. It won't be the first time. How'd you get hooked up with Patti Griffin, and what was the connection that you guys had that you could work together for so long? I mean, 16 years working with somebody is not a common thing, as you know.
Yeah, man, that was just dumb luck, I guess. Well, yeah. So after the questionnaires, kind of, I was in the questionnaires, and had my best friend playing bass with me in that band, and we kind of hooked up with Jay Joyce, and we're kind of all living in a house together. He was kind of stopping the band that he was doing and writing his own songs for something else, and it turned into this other thing that involved me and Chris Feinstein, who was the bass player with me in questionnaires and my best friend, and we that became Bedlam, and we did a record on MCA really quickly. Like, I think we did one live show and had a record deal, and then kind of just recorded stuff for a couple of years, released the record, and that I bring up because that's how I met Patti. Was that Jay was making Flaming Red, her second release, at his house. And at that time, we were all just kind of hanging out. So he ended up playing on whatever Jay was working on and that kind of thing. So that's where I met her. But it was one of those instances of like sitting on a couch in the studio, and she picked up an acoustic guitar and played a song. And I remember telling her right there, I said, listen, do you want to put a band together and I'll drop everything I'm doing?
Oh, you were that smitten with her music?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember calling Jay and kind of backing that up and going, sure enough, she did put a band together because that was, Flamin' Red was really equally a Jay Joyce record as it was a Patti Griffin record. It was a big rock record, and it was dense. And she had management at the time, a manager who would, put a band together for her from all over the United States. These guys came. But I was the one guy that had gone and talked to her directly. So I was in the room on Patti's request, and then I met, a lot of these guys, they're still really dear friends of mine, were in that room that day that I walked in. But we put together this big rock band. And went and did that. And then, that kind of through the years got whittled. Sorry, it got whittled down to, I was that spent with her music, man. She's just really that good. And we did this really big rock band thing for a while. I remember doing, we were doing Lilith Fair when that first started.
Where was that? I remember that. Where was that?
I don't remember. We played a few of them.
Okay.
It was like a traveling circus, I think, for a while. I don't really remember, but at the same time, we were also playing to clubs to 8 people. We were out there working it. And really long story short, that's how it kind of progressed. We went and made a record in New Orleans that got sat on at the same time that the Dixie Chicks were asking her to come open for them. So we were like opening up the Dixie Chicks in the middle of their heyday, and my friend Bob Britt was playing guitar for them at that time.
I know Bob. He's a great guy. Yeah. He might have even hooked. I don't know if he's the one who hooked us up. I think he might have.
I just talked to him this morning. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a great guy. How's he doing?
He's doing well.
Good.
He's actually going into surgery as we speak.
Man, I hope he's okay.
Yeah.
Super sweet guy.
It's supposed to go really well. I'm sure it will.
So I just want to point something out about, you said that you were playing clubs for 8 people, and but she wound up winning a couple of Grammys. You were part of some of that success. And, I want to point that out because I think a lot of times people think things just go great for people that win Grammys or people that become successful. And I don't think people often realize how tough it is to be successful in any endeavor, whether it's business or music. And it's usually, everybody has to suck wind and do not horrible, but do shitty gigs or shitty whatever you're doing and like fail a bunch of times and stick it out. And then if you're lucky and you keep doing that, you might catch a break, and then one thing might lead to another and you might get 2 Grammys, I mean, it's just, I think I just wanted to bring that up because I thought that was really cool. Not cool that you played to 8 people, but that you went through that, but and you got to the other side,
Yeah. I still like hearing, you know what I mean? I still like being reminded of how hard they worked on Damn the Torpedoes.
Yeah. No.
You know what I mean? That they spent 2 days on a snare drum set. That's insanity. But there's something, it's good to be reminded that it's really hard work.
Everything is hard. I have this thing on my wall here, like when I'm having a shitty day, I put it up there because, I have them once in a while. It says there's only 3 reasons you'll not be successful. You don't try new things, you don't learn from what you try, or you give up.
Yeah.
And, when I'm feeling like shit, which doesn't happen often if I'm working on a project or whatever, and I always just look over there and say, okay, but don't give up.
Yeah. I'm working on this, but most everybody that I work with has heard this story from me because it's almost like a disclaimer I have to give, that at some point during the making of a record, if I'm producing or taking it through down to the mix, that I'm going to get to the point where I'm convinced it's a piece of shit. Absolutely convinced it's no good, and that there's a really good chance that that's all entirely my fault. And obviously that's my own thing.
Yeah.
But I do. It's also part of the process.
Yes.
To where I have to. I try not to as much anymore, but it's really difficult for me to not get into there to the point where I lose a perspective. And it's usually when I'm done. It's usually like when it's finished or mixed, like really done. And it takes me a while, but there's not one record that I've ever done that, and again, I need to get away from it. It might need 6 months to a year or 2 years before it pops back up again on iPod Shuffle or something.
What do you do at that point to let's say you don't have 6 months and you got to get the freaking record out, whether
it's my own little self-esteem issue, I guess. But I have to consciously be aware of it. I know it's coming.
Yeah.
I know this feeling's coming where I'm going to become absolutely sick of it. And just see nothing but things that I missed or things that didn't. I don't know, man. It's really difficult to explain, but I can explain a lot better when I'm in that moment, when I know it's like, nah, I don't know, man. I don't know if I like it anymore. And that's.
Do you think it's like pre-stage jitters?
Maybe,
in a sense, it's
that thing of being done. It's like, I think, working with any kind of art, it's a thing of going, not, you have to know when you're done, and it's really difficult to know that.
Yeah. And and especially you, because you're usually shepherding the whole thing. You're producing, you're mixing, you're playing. Yeah. So in a sense, you're really way too close to it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
You know what?
It's not as out of bounds as it sounds.
No. I actually totally get it. My real gig is I run a marketing company. I've been a consultant for 19 years, right? And so if I'm writing ad copy or doing something, what I wound up learning to do in that situation? or like if I have an issue, what strategy do I take? Even in my own projects, I'm like, okay, I step out of it. I say, okay, if I wasn't me and I was a client of mine, what would I advise that client to do? And that has made a world of difference to me, because I'm no longer involved emotionally in the project. I'm like, a guy comes to me or a client comes to me, what would I tell them to do in this situation? And I go with that, whatever that decision is, whether I feel comfortable, then when I step in and back into me, whether I feel comfortable with that or not, I trust the consultant me more than I trust me on my own projects. And that has helped, dramatically. Pretend I'm somebody else.
I think it's like I said, I usually tell the artist, whoever I'm working with, that just to let them know a little bit about me, so that we get to that point, because, and that is the way I work as well. It's like, I'm really trying to, work with whoever I'm working with, whatever things that they have or whatever they're trying to do, it's really, it's not about me at all,
No, but you feel responsible because you're producing and mastering. And
I do, yeah.
Of course, you have to. It's pride of owner. That's great work ethic. That's all. You got to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally.
They know they're getting the best I can do.
Yeah, which is great. That's the guy you want to work with. You want to work with the guy that's going to agonize over that, not the guy that's going to be like, great, next. What's my next project?
We'll give you blood.
Yeah, right. What made you start a studio with Patti? Was it just because you were recording so much and it was easier to do that, or?
Yeah, man, I started doing that pretty early on, and I think I spent, if not the same amount of time, if not more hours, playing around with recording devices and recording and mixing stuff and playing with stuff and recording stuff. So something I always did, starting with, cassettes. They had 4-track cassettes and 8-track cassettes, and started doing that. I remember back in the day when the songwriter had a publishing deal around here, they'd get $500 to record a demo. And I had a few songwriters that used to just bring me the song, give me the $500, and I would do everything.
So part of that was a hustle. Part of it was you genuinely liked it. But the other part of it was a good hustle, good side husle.
No, it was never a hustle. It was just like, wow, okay, I can actually get paid for doing this.
No, I mean a side hustle, like another source of. I mean like a hustling someone out of something. I meant like a good side gig.
Yeah, it was a way. There used to be money to do that kind of thing.
That's great.
I remember doing some stuff with Kim Ritchie, and who's an old friend of mine, great songwriter. And she was doing that. She was giving me songs to do. And this was, back on the cassette days. And I remember her saying, we should make a record. And I was, we can't make a record. We're recording this in my garage apartment, and, on an 8-track cassette. You can't make a record like that. So the next thing I know is I got a call from Hugh Padgham in England, and she had gone to England to make a record with Hugh Padgham, and he called me and wanted the masters to a song we had cut because he couldn't beat it, and it was it was there was backward guitar loops and stuff going on that he was just like, well, we can't beat it. I really like the masters, and I said, well, okay, but the masters are on cassette. And he just laughed and said, good for you then. Never mind. It was like, okay. And
that's amazing. You had him on a cassette.
Actually, that's when I went and got a digital machine. I started working on one of those Boss 880s. If you remember those, studio.
I don't.
They were great. They were just great. They had a sound too, man. Really good. And because I knew that, well, man, if I was working on digital, I'd probably be on a plane right now, flying some masters out to a session.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: as much as you beat yourself up, you've got loads of Grammy nominations, Grammy wins. So you're obviously doing this at a high level in spite of your, self-criticism. What do you do that might be a little different that causes, that creates the magic? And I know it's an uncomfortable question for you, but you got to be doing something because you've had a lot of big wins. Or what do you think you do?
Man, I don't know. I think the only thing that I have to offer that's different is just my aesthetic, and it's something that you really can't escape. You know what I mean? It's probably the limitations that create that more than anything else. But I really do think it's basically, it's an aesthetic.
Just when you say aesthetic, can you clarify what you specifically, if you can?
Well, I think that encompasses a lot. It encompasses your choices, your just initial instincts, your motivations, your approach, certainly your tones, and any other kind of ideas along those lines. Would be encompassed by an aesthetic.
Gotcha.
And I think that you know what I mean? I don't really know what that is. Obviously, we all try to go out there and do and be better, and get better. And, I feel like I've done that. I feel like I've managed to get better at what I do. But certainly not, any more defined for me about what I do, because it's always different. But that's the one constant that seems to me to stay there. Again, like I said, it's an aesthetic. It's like I kind of realized a while ago, I was working on a record, and there'd be records that I don't even play on, or add very little to guitar wise. But there's an aesthetic to the sound of the record that I identify as, okay, that was my contribution. I don't even know how I imbued it, but it was there. So you just put
it's just your, I understand what you're saying, how your aesthetic. It's not really a tangible thing even.
Yeah. It's not really for me. I don't have, you know what I mean? It's not
like a formula, Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's just your vibe and what you, what you feel.
Yeah.
Wow.
Something along those lines. And there's a thread through it, I can recognize it.
You can. So
I can, yeah. I pull up a bunch of records,
That's got to be pretty cool, though.
Yeah, I guess, but that goes back to me not liking myself so much. You know what I mean?
It's cool until you realize.
I like the process, man. But again, there's nothing. I haven't done anything. I can't go back and listen to and go, man, that's really good. But I you know what I mean. At the same time, I don't really get a whole lot of enjoyment about it.
Yeah.
It has to catch me off guard. It has to catch me from a perspective where I'm not so self-aware about my involvement, I guess.
You ever have a situation where you heard a record and said, man, that sounds really good. And then you realize, wow, that's mine.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's got to feel good.
It, anytime you hear something on the radio, it feels great, but I've had that happen. I've been, I hear something on the radio and go, why does that sound so familiar to me?
And then you realize, this is my record. I produced this.
Right. I did that.
What about the production and engineering process was so intriguing to you early on that you went and you obviously were attracted to this. What about that? What was the allure?
I don't know. I think it was, and I do think it was innate. It was early on. I do remember that, like childhood memories of putting sounds together and kind of being, I would really get lost doing that kind of thing for hours at a time.
Just liked it.
Just liked it, man. Just was kind of drawn to it. Even before I could play anything. I actually remember having, my dad's tape recorder and making recordings before I could play anything.
Are you a tinkerer, like outside of music? Like, yeah. So I wonder if it's interesting that you were so drawn to that. And maybe you're tinkering in something that you really enjoy.
Yeah, but I was really attracted to sound too.
Yeah.
About sound.
That's really cool.
And I remember, I think I had teachers that approached my mom about it and stuff, that I would get lost in I remember, like in like kindergarten, having access to bell tubes, steel tubes, like wind chime tubes. What do you call those bells? That you could freely move around and arrange, and I would spend hours arranging those bells in different chord forms. Really, is what it was.
That's really cool.
And I mean, a ridiculous amount of concentrated time from a 5-year-old or whatever it was, enough to where there might have been some concern.
Well, I think nowadays it's the opposite. It's like you got people that have struggled to pay attention for longer than 2 seconds. And then they're labeled as ADD. I don't think it's weird if a 5-year-old doesn't really pay attention and focus for too long. I think that's kind of normal. But let me ask you this. John Hiatt, how'd you get hooked up with John, and you have any cool or interesting stories about that experience?
Oh, sure, man. John was, I was, still playing with Patti, and I actually was touring with both of them for a while. So it was a little interim thing. And I know that, I knew that he was looking for a guitar player through Vector, through his management. And, I just kept asking about it, kept asking people about it. And actually I had to go do a little audition where I went and sat with an acoustic guitar and played with him out at his place.
He lives out there too? He lives in Nashville?
Yeah, well, he had a farm out in Fairview, Franklin way. Yeah, but he lives here. He does. He lives in Nashville. And yeah, man, that was, it was great to start to play with him, had a really great band with Patrick O'Hearn and Kenneth Blevins on drums. We set up out in his garage, and, little PA on a stick, and just started playing. And it was so great, cause it'd been a long time since I'd played with a 4-piece rock band at that point. Cause for years with Patti, it came to like after 1,000 Kisses, we made 1,000 Kisses, and then she was actually kind of graciously dropped from Interscope. It was the big merger, and
that was Jimmy.
Yeah.
Iovine, or is that his last name?
So Iovine, and she was actually had a deal with MCA, I think. A couple other my friends had a deal with MCA that managed to still have a record deal after that merger happened, but then it just languishes there, and Jimmy Iovine was on the cover of Rolling Stone saying rock is dead, and and he wanted Patti to make a record with one of Dr. Dre's drum sampler guys. I know that conversation took place.
That seems like oil and water. That doesn't really seem very congruent.
I remember having that conversation with Patti, and I just went, you'd make a great record, I'm sure, like that, And she just said, "Oh no, Dougie, I'm a 35-year-old white redheaded singer-songwriter. I'm not going to learn how to dance in a flesh-colored bodysuit. It's just not going to happen."
Yeah.
So she was graciously dropped and had the idea of just coming to my basement and making a record. It really was her intention, because it was suggested that she come cut something that could be pitched, to kind of move on from there, because she was, like I said, freed up at that point. But she came over to the house and in 2 days cut all of those songs on Thousand Kisses.
That's amazing.
In 2 days.
So she must have. She had a very good sense of those songs before she came in.
Those songs were all rejects.
Holy crap!
Yeah, they'd all been like passed on by whoever she was working with or whatever. That's the way she felt anyway. She felt like they were rejects, I think, And she'd written one new song. But
kudos to her to have the balls and say, I believe in these, even though they were, seriously, man. That's
not only that, but that was really my first production credit officially, because as I kind of told you earlier, I would talk people out of making records with me. I'd go, we can't do that. And she was like, yeah, we're not going to make something that we, that we're going to shop. We're not making demos. We'll just fuck it. We'll just make a record. So, you know what I mean? It was her that had it. No, this is a record, but like I said, it unfortunately never worked as seamlessly as it did that. I mean, it was all her. Yeah. She sat and recorded those guitar and vocal performances in 2 days and she was done. And we spent the next 5 days, we made a list of instruments we'd like to hear on the songs. And we went down and put those instruments on. We called a bass player. We called the trumpet player, whatever. And we went down and crossed those instruments off the list, and we didn't add anything or subtract. Everything was crossed off that list, and it was done.
You guys must have had a great vision to be that succinct and specific. And
I believe, like I said, I've tried to do it before, but then again, that's all credit to her because, whether or not how conscious she was of it, I don't think it was much. It was just like, oh nah, yeah, I'd like this and I'd like this and. I'd really like to hear a mandolin. Well, oh yeah, that'd be good. And that was it, but we didn't add anything else. And, again, when we got done with that record, I still didn't feel like it was done. I would have continued adding stuff. There probably would have been more electric guitars on it or whatever, It was hers. No, we're done.
So she said, good.
Yeah, done. Oh, it's done. No worries. It's done. And then, and we were out on the road playing. I remember taking meetings with newly formed ATO Records, that were like, we love this the way it is. We're going to release it the way it is. We have a goal of selling this many records. And it just, it all sounded really like a really good deal to me. And, and it did. It worked. It signed and all those years of playing, like, we had been opening for the Dixie Chicks and stuff like that, but the years previous to that, where we were out playing to nobody in a broken down bus and like literally like breaking down and like, doing all the real hard work that you don't feel you don't feel like anything's working, anything's gaining any momentum or anything like that, It was a really good record, but it wasn't like, things were turning over. But by the time Thousand Kisses came out, obviously some of that work was paying off and people were paying attention.
Was there a specific was there anything specific turning point?
Well, for me, it was the release of that record, and here was the difference: was after that record came out, I remember the first gig after that record was Park West in Chicago, sold out, which was like.
So you went from playing 8, 10, 15 people, all of a sudden it was sold out.
Yeah, that's the way it appeared to me, right?
So it was getting a lot of. They had to be getting a lot of airplay.
Maybe. There wasn't a whole lot of airplay on this would have been following, Flaming Red, which, there was a whole record that never came out in the interim. But I think it was, her first record was getting noticed, and then Flaming Red was getting noticed. And if you listen to the difference between those first two records, that's really interesting. You know what I mean? I I can count the number of times on my two hands that I've heard something come on the radio. Like I'm driving in my car and literally had to pull over, check it out,
Yeah, of course.
Figure out what it was, before Shazam.
Yeah.
But that moment, I think we had those things. Well, what is that really, speaks to you? And Patti was one of those people when I first heard her on the radio. So that was, So whatever airplay was happening, some stuff had been happening. She had new management at the time. But for me, that was the kicker because from my point of view, we were up until that point, we were working as a rock band. When we first started out, we had 64 inputs. We were trying to play the Flaming Red record note for note with backing tracks and loops and all sorts of stuff, which always seemed a little ridiculous to me. But we broke it down to like a 4-piece rock band, but we were still really loud ass rock band. And she was kind of burning out on that. So when we made 1,000 Kisses, it was and at the time it wasn't there wasn't a whole lot of records that were being made that way. It was unique for the time it came out, and I remember being scared to death, going like, "Well, what are we gonna do? Going out there with me and you, with a guitar, and I think we had a cellist, and that was it."
Wow!
And I'm used to the big rock show, drums, bass. It's like,
that's intimidating.
Yeah, it was, and but the weird thing is that we went out and from the get go, the audience, it was the biggest reaction that I'd ever experienced playing with her, and it was because they could hear her. It was her, and you really get it. You know what I mean? And, and that type of artist was just undeniable, and that's what needed to get to.
That's a great story, man. Well, you played on that Strange Angels record. Did you get to interact with any of the guys on there?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I was curious about Warren and Warren Haynes and Billy Gibbons. I don't know how that guy does everything he does. I mean, he's like nonstop, always, and he's been that since like forever. But I was curious if you had any chance to interact with him and Billy Gibbons. What was that like? And any interesting stories about that?
Well, when Warren came into that session, I'd met Warren before, shared the stage with him a few times.
With Patti or with John Hiatt?
With John Hiatt. But so I knew him, but we had been waiting for them to show up at the studio. We were cutting like 4 sessions that day, 4 of the songs one day. With 4 different artists, and we're waiting for him to show up. So I wasn't in the room when they finally showed up, but he had come in and to do a song with Jamie Johnson first, and I had not met Jamie Johnson. And so by the time I went into the tracking room, and I sat down next to Warren, and was like, okay, well, I'm definitely inclined to sit here and just chug and play a rhythm guitar behind you.
Did he have his Les Paul that he usually uses?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yeah, he came in with his, because all those guys were working for some show that we're having at Bridgestone Arena at the time. So that's how Billy ended up coming over to that session.
Okay.
There was rumor that Keith Richards might come over because it was an Elmore James record that was being cut. Jamie was doing it, Warren was doing it, so he ended up coming over with his old crew and setting up. And but I remember putting the headphones on when I was sitting next to Warren, and the next thing I hear is the sound of Jamie Johnson's voice, and I still hadn't laid eyes on him, and I couldn't see him in the studio we were in. And the first thing I hear is he goes, well, Warren, just kick it off. Here's how we're going to do this. We're going to go around 3 times where Warren just plays guitar, and then I'm going to sing a verse. I'm going to sing another verse, and then we're going to go around 3 more times with Warren playing. Then I want to sing one more verse, then go around 4 times with Warren playing. And then I'm going to sing the last thing. We're going to go around, and then you guys just take off on it and end it. And he just described, a 15-minute slow blues jam.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as you were saying that.
Right? Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. What? Are you kidding? But I think, that's a world that's not unfamiliar to Warren at all. That's exactly what he did, And Billy.
What did they cut that song down to? They didn't keep it at the giant long blues jam.
I don't know anything about post, and I don't recall. I remember that we didn't really recut it.
Okay.
Down. If it was edited onto the records version of it, maybe, yeah. It was a long jam, but Billy had come with Warren, and he didn't. I don't think Billy really was sure about entering the room, because I remember him coming in with a couple of other dudes, and he wouldn't venture into the studio, just kind of stood there. And I think there was a little part of like, well, who's, and it was me and it was Marco Giovino, my friend, the drummer.
Yeah, the drummer.
That went up to Billy. And again, it was kind of like, well, who are these young white dudes cutting an Elmore James record? What the hell do they know about the blues? I think there was just a little bit of that going on where he didn't really want to enter the room. Because when we walked up to him, he just started talking about these guys. And it's important to note that they were young, and they were trying to cut heads, and they were trying to make the best sounding records possible, and what people. And he just kept talking until finally, I remember talking about the blues, and Marco just said to him, he goes, "Yeah, it's the most difficult music in the world to play." And he looked at him, and you could see he was like, okay. And he walked into the room. And we, and it was like, from that point on, we kind of had to coax him into playing.
That's weird.
I gave him a Stratotone that I just loved.
One of those old harmonies?
It was just, yeah.
God, I love those guitars, man.
Old foil. The chamber body one, the red and black.
I love those guitars.
It's property of John Hiatt.
Wow.
John had a whole pile of them at his place.
With the 2 pickups? Or was it one?
Yeah.
With the Armin pickups? I love those guitars.
Yeah, they're the best sounding pickup. I mean, it's the best tone. It hasn't been improved upon.
I love that. That's my next purchase. But it's weird that, you either see them one of 2 ways. You'll see them on Reverb or whatever for like $400, but they're really like cracked headstock, and then you'll see them in that where someone's already tweaked it and it's $1,400, and I'm not paying $1,400. So I'm just waiting to see when I find something that's reasonable that I can get it to someone like that could work on it and knows what they're doing. It's a reasonable price.
Yeah, I think, and that it's funny too because John's pile, when I say a pile, it was a literal pile. They were piled up in a corner, some in cases, not in cases. And he told me, can't remember which record he was making, but he had this little period of time where he would just go in, and back in the day they were called pawn shop guitars or whatever. Sure. There'd be the guitar that'd be hanging it for $75. 9 times out of 10, it said Silvertone or Harmony on it, or K. And so he would just go into music stores, and anything under $100 he'd buy.
Yeah. Well, that's a good deal because you can get them fixed up, and even if you got 4 or 5 into them, you got a mint guitar.
And, he was playing. He knew. I mean, he was playing that Stratotone with Raikuda. That was one of his main guitars there. I've seen old footage of him playing that guitar. And he was, just gracious enough to say, yeah, man, go over there, dig through the pile, and on most of the records that I played with on him were on guitars that were pulled out of that pile because the tone was not going to be beat by anything else.
No.
You know, and he let me hold on to the guitar, and I'll just take it on the road and play it and stuff, you know. And it's the one guitar that he called me and said, "Hey, I need that back."
That's funny. So Billy was playing that, and he was probably loving it.
It's that guitar that I handed Billy to play on that record too. So I took some pictures of it, John,
and I'm sure he loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Billy.
Yeah, he gave me a big thumbs up, and he slipped me a pair of dice.
A pair of dice?
Yep.
What's that for?
As I'm talking to him, he just reached in his pocket and he pulled out a pair of dice, and he stuck them in my hand.
Does that mean you're in the circle?
I think so. It was definitely, yeah. I felt noted. You know?
Wow. I got Billy Gibbons dice.
Yeah, man. I still got them.
That's so what? That's a little bizarre, but whatever. He's a musician. He's entitled.
Yeah. You just hand him over his little wink, you know.
He's Billy Gibbons. He could do what he want. Coolest guy in town.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
He stole my slide, though.
Oh. Maybe that was payment for the slide. Maybe it wasn't stealing. Maybe it was intentional. It was like it just didn't say it, you know, like this is for your slide.
It wasn't intentional at all.
This is for your slide.
Yeah, no, I literally put the guitar on his back and put the slide on his finger.
That's cool, man. Are you working on anything now that you're excited about?
Well, I mean, you mentioned some of that stuff, you know, that's coming out. I'm anxious to hear some of it, you know. I just finished a record with my good friend Kelly Looney, who's been playing bass with Steve Earle for 30 plus years, you know. And he's got a little website, and that record will be coming out as soon as we get it through mastering and out onto the interweb. And he'll be, you know, he makes it to place on Steve Earle's merch table, you know. So I just finished that up, and I'm going to England in next month in July to go over there with Matthew Ryan and his band, opening shows for the Gaslight Anthem. So that should be pretty fun. We just played last night at a club down the street. We're just doing these Wednesday night things just to get in shape.
Yeah.
Go over there and do that UK stuff.
That's really cool.
But you know, always down in my studio, you know, anytime that I have time to myself, that's what I do. And I go and I play guitar, man. And that's really what we should be talking about, I guess, you know, because it is that's one thing we all share in common. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's what that is, you know, and that love for it. And, you know, getting lost in it, but that's what I do. So it's like, you know, I'm never bored. I'm always working.
Yeah.
And so I'll just go in and I'll just start making stuff up.
On that Kelly Looney record, you played on it and you also did the production, engineering, and mastering?
Yeah. I played almost everything on it.
That's great.
Played drums on it, but I played drums on a couple of things. I actually played bass on it. He's a bass player. But he would just leave me the songs and go on the road.
Very cool.
He'd come back and he left me a few more songs. And, you know, so I was getting to do everything in my own kind of spare time with only the self-imposed deadline. So
let me go back a step. You originally come from Wilkes-Barre. Is that Wilkes-Barre? How do you pronounce that? It's two words. Wilkes-Barre.
Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. Really.
It's Barre though, right?
It is.
Every time I see that, I never knew how to pronounce it. Wilkes-Barre. Originally from there, and then you grew up in Franklin. What was your childhood like? Sounds pretty normal, or?
Yeah, it was pretty normal. Like I said, once the guitar kicked in, you know, that's what it was all about. I was in a band real early on before I could drive. You know, I had a friend that had a car and would drive me to band rehearsals. You know, that was my group. My parents didn't really worry about me because that's what I would be doing. You know.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I do. I have a younger brother and an older sister.
Any of them involved in music?
No, sir.
You've become very Southern with the sir.
Yeah, I've been here a long time. Today, if I read Wilkes-Barre, I would say Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah. I've seen, you just cleared it up. I never knew how to pronounce, I didn't think I was pronouncing it right. I'm like, can't be Wilkes-Barre, but Wilkes-Barre.
That's Wilkes-Barre.
Wilkes-Barre. Yeah. What kind of work did your folks do?
My dad was in advertising.
Oh yeah. You said that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You've been doing this a long time. I was curious, Doug, what were maybe some of the obstacles you had to overcome, to get through stuff as we all have to do, either, personally, musically, business related?
Man, I think that little note that you have on your wall about don't quit is a really big part of this, because I've seen guys that can play rings around me that couldn't take it anymore, and are successful insurance salesmen or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a perseverance thing that's involved, and getting along with people. It's all about people. It's definitely all about relationships.
Are you good with that, or have you always been good with that?
I think I'm good. I'm good with working with a band. I like the exchange of that energy, and I kind of instinctively want to work within that energy of whatever's happening, within a group of people playing music together.
That's really, I like how you put that. That's really nice.
No, I'm a pretty easygoing hang, I think. It's not, I've seen people that, just for whatever reason, need to be assertive in social situations and stuff. It's just like, oh no, man, I can't have him on the bus anymore. Fine player, but
yeah,
not really working.
No, I hear you, man.
So that's a big part of it. But I think the perseverance thing, and it's difficult to live without any security of knowing what's happening next.
Totally.
I mean, certainly with like when I started playing with John Hiatt, even I mean because Patti would take good long hunks of time off, and certainly toward the end she ended up taking more and more time off. To the end of me playing with her anyway, and then she ultimately kind of put her solo career on hold and ended up doing the Band of Joy stuff with Robert Plant. And that was the interim where it was like, okay, well, we have this studio together. And that was really the intention of it was, I pulled a lot of her gear out of her house in Texas, and we went into that place together. I couldn't have done it without her. But it was during that interim where the opportunity came to play with John. And of course, that's a guitar player's
dream. That's a great job.
Because he's a badass and he's a badass guitar player, but he downplays that in the band situation and gives you all the rope you could care to have. It will let you hang yourself,
That's great.
And turn up, play more.
That's fantastic. That's like really cool.
Then you have his catalog to work with, and you've got if you can steal a Sonny Landreth riff, if you could pull off that one note where Ry Cooder put it in that song, you all of a sudden it's like, oh, you can play.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's into playing with other people, and he's into complete free reign of that, like going, do your own thing then.
Well, maybe he feels the same way you do. And I wrote this down because I really liked it. You like the exchange of energy in the band environment. Man, maybe he feels the same way. That's what it sounds like.
He does. I remember him telling me that early on when I was auditioning with him. He would be like, I like playing with other people, man.
But I like the way you put it, the exchange of energy, because that's what it is, man.
It is. It absolutely.
Yeah, but that's what it is in any interaction. But especially, you know, in a band environment, you know, that's all the more so. But like even this conversation, there's an exchange of energy, and you know, you want to be in a situation.
Exactly. That's all.
Yeah, and I'm very aware of that because I feel it, and obviously you do. And it's always like a good thing when you go into something with a certain energy level and you come out with either that or that plus something. And then, you know, man, this has been a very good exchange of energy. And the opposite is like when you go into something with somebody and you come out and you're like, fuck, I'm drained, man. This is a low return on my investment.
Sure.
You know, that's a drag, man.
Yeah, and being aware of that, you know, and music is just like such an unbelievable example of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get hung up on you know, being individually a great player. But, you know, it's like talking about REM earlier is a good example of that. But, you know, some of my favorite music's made by guys that are like, you know, it's the way they play together.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I see. I definitely, for sure, man. So let me ask you this. If you could go back and give the younger Doug Lancio advice, assuming you were willing to accept it, which you seem pretty open, man. You don't seem to be a guy who's like stubborn or hard-headed at all.
Probably to a fault.
Yeah, I hear you.
To a fault. You know what I mean? I'm going to get done with this and go, oh, man, why didn't I say this? And why did I say that?
You're saying everything great as far as I'm concerned. But what advice would you have given yourself that you think might have benefited from you?
Well, I probably would have addressed that issue I'm talking about now. Whatever that was with the self-esteem. It's just like, get over that and get on with it. Like
good is good enough, in a sense.
It's really more about trusting yourself and believing yourself, believe in yourself kind of thing, you know.
Sure.
You know, I think you know, I would try and tell myself to try and remove fear from the equation. You know, and I have a 15-year-old, you know, so that's all I can think about when you ask me that question is like what I would like to instill in him, you know. Ultimately, what I hope for him is to find what I found with music, which was very early on, unquestionably knew what I wanted to do. And it wasn't a business plan.
Sure.
It was what I wanted to do when I woke up in the morning and what I wanted to do in the middle of the day and at night. And I think if you find that, if whatever it is, well, you can figure out how to be happy in life. That's, you know, you should be able to figure out how to construct the rest of your life around that, make a living from it, or whatever that means.
Yeah, yeah.
But to find that thing of like of something that you love to do and be, and you know. And I'm sure you've had every musician you've talked to say that.
Yeah.
How grateful they are to have found that and that we're lucky that we get to do this.
Yeah, and get paid for it. Yeah, everybody.
Living doing. Yeah.
Let's talk about gear for a few minutes. I know you got a ton of guitars. What's your like go-to guitar right now? And maybe what other two guitars would round out your top three?
Man, you know, that Silvertone of John Hiatt just quickly became like, you know, that's the thing that's like it. You know, when I hear back anything that I played, that's the only stuff I like is the stuff that was played on that guitar. Or I have a Harmony Rocket reissue. That's awesome.
What is that now? What does that look like?
It looks like a rocket with a lot of knobs on it.
Yeah, that's the only thing with some of those guitars, man. There's like 4, 5, 6 knobs on some of those old Harmonies, and I'm like, yeah, that's like a cockpit for me. I can't.
It's in its case somewhere. I'd show it to you, but it's a Harmony Rocket, and there was a guy, Charlie Sabez, I believe I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. He originally bought the rights to Harmony, and this isn't that long ago, and he set about reissuing the Stratotone, the old solid body Stratotone, the Rocket, the Meteor, some of these older silver Bobcat, the Silvertone.
Yeah, the Bobcat, right.
Now, he sent them to Korea to be built. But I met him out with on the road with John Hiatt. And he brought some guitars, and he gave some to John. He gave one to me, and I played it on a gig that night, and he let me take it with me. And then later, I was out on the road with Buddy Miller and Patti doing that gospel record tour, and he came out and he brought Buddy a guitar, and he brought me two more, and I've had it on stage next to the original, and they were very difficult to tell apart. It has
really?
Stuff, yeah. It has all the funkiness of the old Guilfoyles and stuff. You know, it's lacking a little bit there, but those Guilfoyles were also really inconsistent.
Yes,
you get really good ones. You get ones that are a little weaker. You know, and then it appears as if they were installed on the guitars. It almost seems as if they just put them wherever they want them. So you'll see them back by the bridge. You'll see them up by the neck. You'll see them somewhere in the middle.
I didn't realize that. Where did they make those? Where was that factory?
Chicago. Because there was the Dan Electros were being made, you know, for Sears, and I can't remember the whole thing, but a lot of them were being made at the same place, but they were being distributed by either Sears and Roebuck or some other catalog or
yeah, you know what? They private labeled those because sometimes I'll see, you know, this is a Harmony for sale, but it's not. It doesn't say Harmony. It says it's something else, but it's effectively a Harmony labeled, you know, like you just said, Montgomery Ward or for Sears or something else like that.
Yeah. Well, I think Silvertone was the Sears catalog guitar.
Okay.
You know, I mean, you hear those stories about the lipstick pickup.
Yeah.
That's where that was made, right? It was a lipstick cover that they, you know, it came out of the factory from the warehouse that was used to distribute through the catalogs, through the Sears catalogs and stuff. I don't remember exactly, but the history is really funny. But the peculiar thing is you talk about how these went from $75 pawn shop guitars to now they want $1,400 for. Now, I know that, you know, Jack White and the Black Keys and stuff like that had a big influence in that market. And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense because, you know, the White Stripes would have never happened had he been playing a Les Paul through a Marshall. It would not have worked.
Yeah.
You know, that was just a huge part of why that worked.
Well, the Black Keys, I think even more so their sound is to find. And it's funny because I was having a conversation, exactly what you said. Someone said, what makes guitars iconic and valuable is not the guitar, it's the people who have played the guitar.
Yeah, to realize how much influence they have on that market. You know, the fact that, you know, it was the Blues Breaker cover or whatever that was, you know, the reason that Les Pauls became really popular, that Jeff Beck was playing the Strat, or like most, you know, guitar players were playing the Strat, or Jimmy Page or Jimi Hendrix and all that stuff. Well, then, you know, that's definitely had a huge part of the reason that, you know, what's a 59 Les Paul worth now?
Oh, hell yeah.
Right? I mean, there's a big part of that. And you see that with the guitar, but the other thing to think about with those guitars are they were American made. They were being played by everyone that Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, and Eric Clapton and Keith Richards were trying to sound like.
Yeah.
Were trying to sound like. They were playing these guitars. That's where that tone was coming from. They're not being made anymore. They're almost all completely individual works of art because they're, you know what I mean? They weren't coming this production line, or if it was, you know, it was like there were things that were just wrong about them. So you can look at, for me, I look at that and go like, not only that, but again, I'm sure you find this talking to most guitar players, that gold foil is the best sounding pickup ever produced, right?
To me, that's the closest thing, you know, the British blues sound, the British brown sound that you know, is so well known. That pickup exemplar, to me, just in my mind, is closest to that than anything.
Yeah.
But
it was Howlin' Wolf. It was Muddy Water.
Mm-hmm.
It was Harpo. It was the guys that those guys were trying to sound like.
Yeah.
Actually, that's what they were playing. Right? So you think about that and go like, oh, okay. They weren't playing Tellies and Strats.
Right. Or Les Pauls for sure.
Oh, they were playing Ks and harmonies and so on.
Yeah.
And again, you look at those guitars and go like, well, they're American made. They're not being made anymore. Where on earth are they ever going to go back down in value?
Right. No, they're not. They're not.
In a market that never really seemed to have ever turned and gone down, you know.
But then you look at, right, you ever heard of a guy, Junior Kimbrough?
Yeah.
So you look at a guy like that, he was probably playing a Walmart a Walmart Strat. And I listen to that guy and I'm in awe of his sound and his whole vibe. So it, which goes back to the whole thing again of, man, it's the person, it's the fingers, it's the touch.
It's the thing.
Yeah. Because
it is.
I've seen videos of that guy. I'm trying like, what guitar? And it's a some Strat, but man, you know what? When you smoke, I haven't smoked a cigarette in 30 years, but watching you smoke, you enjoying that. It makes me want to, I have never had an urge in 30 years, like maybe
it's
one. You look like you're just so relaxed.
Things I do.
It looks like relaxing.
I'm good at it.
I smoke cigars now, man, but I won't smoke a cigar, but it just looks, those are non-filtered either, are they?
No, these are just Marlboro Lights.
Oh, they are. I thought there was no filter in there. I was like, wow, this guy's a man. So guitar number 2 and 3, got the silver tone would be your top. What's your next couple?
Well, kind of go along the lines you're talking about, man. I had a Fender, a Telecaster that kind of attached itself to me a long time ago. I'm still trying to shake it, but it was one of those things like just being the easiest thing that you could throw on your back and carry around, and actually, as a matter of fact, a good story about my Telecaster is back when I was playing with Nancy Griffith, and we landed just to fly on American all the time. And we landed, and they said my name over the intercom to come to the front of the plane when we landed, where they broke the news to me that my guitar had been destroyed.
Oh.
And we were leaving the Denver airport, and I remember that they had just installed like some $8 billion conveyor belt system for luggage, where the conveyor belt would come outside. You could check in and they'd put their bags out on this conveyor belt. So evidently the guitar was in a hard plastic Fender case. Evidently the guitar slipped off the top of one of these blue bins they were putting luggage in, and went into the gear of the conveyor belt system and got chewed up and spit out onto the tarmac, where it was run over by a tow truck that tows airplanes. And the tire mark was still across the top of the body and had pressed the bridge saddles down. And they handed it to me in a garbage bag. The case and everything was in a garbage bag. And the neck was splinters. And there were gouges taken out of the body of the guitar that were like an inch deep. But the body was intact. And I took it to my friend Joe Glazer here in town.
Oh, he's a great guy.
And he goes, man, I happen to have a neck, a couple serial numbers off from, and this is a cheap guitar, man. This is a cheap Mexican Telecaster.
Were you on your way back from playing, or did you have more shows to play? Like, did they give you a guitar, or what the?
It must have been coming home, because that wasn't a problem.
Okay. Did they give you a few bucks for it at least?
Well, that's the story. That's the good part of the story. Yeah, I made a lot of money on that. But this is back in the day. I don't think you do that. And I had to fight for it. As a matter of fact, so they handed me this thing, and I took it to Joe, and he goes, well, let's, there's a big crack down the middle of it. He goes, well, we'll see. And we tried to break it. and we couldn't break it, so we stuck a neck on it. And it's still the way the guitar is to this day. But it had a bender. It had a Joe Glaser B bender on it that held up, and it was completely intact.
Wow.
And the guitar actually behaved a little better from that point on. But I remember them not wanting to give money for it, you know.
How is that even possible? It had nothing to do with, it's 100% error.
And I remember talking to my road manager friend, and they were just building the Hard Rock Casino or Hard Rock Club in Nashville at the time. And I remember offhandedly say, you know, tell them that if they don't pay me for it, I'm going to go down to the Hard Rock and tell them to put it in one of their, you know, glass cases with a tag that says, you know, courtesy of American Airlines.
Awesome.
And he evidently reiterated that story because they said, okay, we'll write you a $2,000 check.
Nice.
But you need to give us the rest of the pieces back. And I was like, and I, by this point, had already put a neck on it. I wasn't giving it back. And they evidently came back and said, well, we really don't want it ending up hanging up on the wall on a display as art or anything like that. It's like, okay, no, that won't happen. But evidently it was that kind of threat that worked.
Yeah, well, that was, you know, nowadays you just put out a tweet or something.
I guess, would that work?
I don't know. It seems to, you know, I think things are random. And, you know, I read stuff like that, you know, you see an article, somebody had you know, their baby vomited and somebody was rude to them on the plane, the stewardess or the host. And then, you know, they complained about it and then they gave them round trip tickets to fucking Fiji. I don't know. Shit like that happens to me. And they say, we're sorry and stop complaining. I don't know. So I think it's
you know,
it's kind of random. I think
a lot of what seems to be the way things run today, you know, it's a matter of how many hits you can get, how much attention you can get from.
Yeah. I think a lot of it's that. And I think maybe the more you bitch, you know, I don't know. I try to get hits. Yeah. I try to, like, if something negative happens to me, I just try to delete it and move on as fast as possible, to be honest with you. It's just, for me, it's more energy to manage the fixing, you know, making it right, you know. I just move on. It's just easier. So, okay, your telly, Silvertone, your telly, what would be number 3?
I have a Gretsch Viking that I like a lot.
What's a Viking?
Viking, they only made the Viking for a couple of years, but it was actually the top of the line model that they were building. I think it was 66 to 68.
Wonder why they stopped.
Man, I don't know why they stopped. It probably didn't take off or whatever, because I do believe it was the top of the line that they were making.
I'm looking it up right now. 1970s. Yeah.
It's the Cadillacs.
Sunburst or wood? What is yours?
Mine's Sunburst.
They're pretty looking guitars, man. 67
They're great.
Sunburst.
Yeah, beautiful guitars, and they have a weird thing in them where they have they had a name for it, a Resomatic or something like that, but it's a tuning fork that's attached to a 3-prong plate, and the strings, you weave the strings between the 3 prongs in and out, and it suspends the tuning fork into the body of the guitar. There's a hole cut in the body of the guitar. Sometimes you'll see,
I'm looking at this here.
Sometimes you'll see old Gretsches that'll just have a hole, you know, like a 1-inch diameter hole cut in the guitar between the bridge and the pickup. And that's where they had but the thing about the Resomatic or whatever they called it, it had your intonation because the strings are coming out of that and going to your nut.
Oh, okay.
And it's just suspended. It just suspends the tuning fork into the body of the guitar. It's a tuning fork.
That's why. What do those pickups sound like?
Pickups sound great.
Like, are they like muddy humbuckers, or are they like, what are they? Are they?
Oh, they're the
bright.
Well, they're the Armands.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Oh shit! That's another one goes on my list. I've got to get a freaking Silvertone.
Man, you know the other DeArmonds that are great are the old ones that you could put into the into acoustic guitars. Those are great sounding pickups.
I know nothing about acoustic guitars, man. Unfortunately,
and this will turn your acoustic guitar into an electric guitar. As a matter of fact, that John Hiatt record that you talked about in the introduction, that was originally the concept that he had was, well, I want to make, I don't want to use electric guitars. I want to make like an acoustic kind of thing. But that all changed like on the day that he came over to start, and he brought over an electric guitar. But it quickly became, okay, well, we didn't use electric guitars. We used all acoustic guitars, but they were all run through amplifiers.
That's cool.
And I have an older Silvertone acoustic guitar that I picked up for $200, and I had the Armin pickup in it, and I was running through, I don't know what I was running through, either my Vox, or I think I actually had a Mesa Boogie that I just picked up. And if you listen to guitar tones on that record, there's some really good tones that are, I'm playing like single note blues style guitar on it, and it's screaming, but it's an acoustic guitar
with the DeArmond pickup.
Yeah, and I also have a Resophonic guitar that has a pickup in it, that if I sit behind the console with the monitors up with that guitar, it's just a big speaker, so it picks up whatever's coming through the speakers and runs it through my amplifier. So I would sit with that guitar sometimes, and I wouldn't play anything. I would just, and that's how we did cut a lot of that record, was just his performance with Kenneth Blevins playing drums. But I was also sitting behind the console recording my guitar input, which was basically feeding back through the console. And, but it was, it was the sound of the drums and his guitar and his voice coming through that guitar through an amplifier.
You're in heaven when you get to do that, I'm imagining, because of all the sounds that you're kind of getting to mess around with. Yeah,
man. You could just stand in front of that thing and have it feed back. And it was, it's a pretty beautiful thing.
Hey, music, Desert Island Discs, in no particular order, and knowing you can change tomorrow, what would be the top 3 records for you just for today?
Just for today. Can I just get a Spotify account?
Maybe. I don't know. I have one. I don't really use it often. I don't stream much. I like, my kids are like, Dad, you listen to so much music. Why don't you just get Apple Music? I'm like, man, I got about 50,000 songs in my iTunes. I mean, I don't, I'm good.
Yeah, man. Desert Island Discs, huh? Well, that's implying that that's all you would have to listen to the rest of your days.
Yeah, but you're overthinking this.
I am, aren't I?
Yeah, just like
man. Damn the Torpedoes. I brought that up. That was one of my first records I ever had. My first LPs. I got that record the year it came out for Christmas, and I also got Pink Floyd The Wall.
Great album.
And I got, at the same time, I was just a kid, and I went to a Easter promotion for a local radio station, WKDF, that was dropping Easter eggs in a mall parking lot from a helicopter. And you'd go out, and once they dropped the Easter eggs, you were allowed to go collect the Easter eggs. And then they had a little truck, and you would take your Easter egg to the truck and collect your prize. And I was standing in line to collect my prize, which the grand prize at the time seemed to be the soundtrack to Hair, the musical. And I really wanted
Great soundtrack, yeah.
Really wanted the soundtrack to Hair. I was quite excited about it, and I was very disappointed when I got up and they had run out of the soundtrack to Hair and had no more copies left. So they gave me a cutout record of a band nobody had heard of. And I still have it to this day, and it's literally the corners cut out.
I remember those.
Promotion, not for resale.
Yeah.
So they had a box somebody had given them of the Police's first record, Outlandish to You More.
Great record, man.
Handed me that record, and I was like, what is this? This is awful. Terrible day. But I took it home and listened to it. So those are like my first 3 LPs. I don't know if they're my Desert Island discs, but maybe they should be.
They're all great records, man. Very period specific.
You'd want so much stuff, you know.
Oh yeah, you want a Spotify account.
Sound to me is like listening to symphonic music.
James Brown, yeah, he's
James Brown is like, yeah,
a lot of shit going on there.
It you know, man, that's as deep as I could possibly think about getting into music, you know.
Man, what have you learned? What's the most important things you've learned about yourself over the course of this? Now it's time to lay down, man.
Yeah. Right. I'm still working on that, I guess, you know.
Aren't we all?
You know, I guess it's an interesting question, you know, but that's difficult. That's like saying, what do you want? You know? It's an interesting question, man. I'm sorry I don't have an answer for you, what I've learned about myself.
No, it's all good.
Through music, you know. I don't know. To me, it's like, you know, it's still something that I'm constantly pulled toward, you know. There's that thing, and I don't know what it is focus or whatever you want to call it, but I'm sure you have it, of that thing of where you can go to a guitar and just everything else goes away. Yeah, no matter what it is. Very much. It goes away. And, you know, I was out on the road with the late, great Ian McLagan. Wow. And he had lost his wife. He was obviously a very heartbroken guy, and I could identify with that with him. But we used to talk about it. He suffered from headaches that would go away when he played. And we used to talk about it all the time. It would be that thing of like, as soon as he started playing music, that headache would go away. And all our other heartbreaking concerns would disappear for the amount. And then our show would be over. We'd stop playing. We'd get back on the bus, and they'd slowly start to return. Wow.
What's something or someone you miss from your childhood, Doug?
Oh, man, so many people. So many people. You know, I brought this guy up earlier, Chris Feinstein.
Yeah, the bass player, you said?
Yeah, well, you know, he was just a really talented guy, actually. When I was in the Questionnaires, when I was with my first band, he was with a band, you know, playing drums. And he could play guitar really well. And so, well, you can play bass, you know. So he actually kind of feel like, you know, in a way I taught him to play bass because we needed a bass player in my band. And I talked him into doing that. And I remember him coming to my house, and we sitting down and figuring out bass lines and how to play the bass, you know. And then later, then we were in Bedlam together, and he was just early on. I miss him because we had that musical simpatico that was like just easy. It was just easy to bounce ideas off of each other and play together and intuitively know where the other person was going. You know, we would sit around and do that constantly. He
passed?
He did, man. Yeah. He was out playing with Ryan Adams. You know, I missed him for years before he died because he had moved to New York, you know, and he ended up playing with another friend of ours, good friend of mine that I've known since he was a kid, that was playing drums for Ryan Adams. He was playing drums in the band that Bedlam became after I left Bedlam, Brad Pemberton, and he's out playing with Steve Earle now. So, you know, like I said, it all goes back to that people thing and the relationships, and it's all And Nashville is just crazy like that, man.
Totally, man.
People coming here now, and they're all kids, and they can all just. There's so many guitar players here that will just kill you, And I've been here so long that I look at it now, and it's an inconvenience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think about it, and I go like, well, man, if I was living in Wilkes-Barre, or somewhere else, and via the internet or whatever, heard about Nashville, I'd want to come here too.
Oh, hell yeah.
Ron, but as it is, I'm like I said, I'm annoyed by it. It's just like, it's too much. It's too much. But the players are ridiculous. So I am grateful to be here. I would never go anywhere else. But yeah, Chris Feinstein, and I had that thing with Patti too, musically, go back and kind of answer your question from earlier. It was a simpatico thing. She was one of those people that, we could just sit down and play guitars, or she would have a new song and I wouldn't have to hear it. I could just start playing with her and it would work.
She's like your music wife.
She actually said that once. Yeah, that we were musically married. Because that's what it was like.
Yeah, sure, I get it, totally.
And I still miss her, and hopefully, maybe one day get to play with her again do something together.
Most important person in your life?
My son.
Who's had the biggest influence in your life, both musically and personally?
I don't know if there's any one person that encompasses that. There's been a lot of them, man. Been a lot of a lot of people that I would consider to be guides.
Mentors, kind of?
Mentors, sure. Inspirations. I lost my father. He passed away. It's just been about 2 years now, and that was a blow I didn't see coming. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect to feel the amount of loss that I felt.
Were you guys close or not really?
Yeah, we were close as a father and son, I guess, you know what I mean? But I didn't feel like, I don't know, man. I was close to him, but I didn't really expect to feel the kind of loss that I felt. If that makes any sense.
Well, I haven't been in those shoes, but
Well, yeah,
so it's hard.
Funny because I hadn't either, obviously, but when I would talk to people that did, it always seemed like a much heavier thing to them than it was going to mean to me.
Oh, okay, I get you. Yeah, I understand.
But then you find out that it's really it really kind of turns you inside on a biological, genetic level. Things shift. I found, it was like, wow, I didn't, you just maybe don't realize the influence that's present until you experience the loss.
I'm really sorry for your loss, man.
Oh man, well, thank you. No, I'm all good. I'm talking about it more from like it's an interesting thing you go through. We're of that age where it's like, well, I'm of the age. You know what I mean?
No, I'm sure we're close in age.
It's not an uncommon thing, it's like with what, people go through, it's part of it.
Yeah.
And just, with raising my son, it's impacted me in ways I didn't see coming. So when you ask about that, it's just kind of like, well, my father wasn't a musician, but he took me to see B.B. King when I was 12 years old. Ramsey Lewis opened. Trio.
Wow.
Get it,
What a great show that must have been.
Yeah, man. And,
this was when you just moved to Nashville, or is that still in Wilkes-Barre?
I was probably in Cincinnati, man.
Okay.
I think that was probably in Cincinnati while we were there. We also went to a lot of Reds games together, you know.
I love the Reds back in the 70s, man, when they were the big red machine, man.
Exactly. Yeah. I got to meet Pete Rose and Johnny Bench.
Did you really? That must have been a highlight.
They let us to school the day Pete Rose broke the base stealing record.
Did you get a selfie with him?
You know, I don't think there's any photographs. My mom called him Pete Rose an asshole to his face.
Really?
Yeah. We were at a book signing at one of my dad was, you know, advertiser in retail. So we were at one of his department stores for a book signing, and we're standing in line, and my brother, who must have been 4 or 5 years old, went up and grabbed the book, and Pete Rose evidently went, "Hey kid, you got to pay for that." And my mother said, "He's 5, you asshole."
Man, don't piss off a mother.
Yeah, right. I don't think Pete Rose was a stranger to being called that.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But he was also, you know, he was a folk hero.
Yeah. Oh, especially in that part of the neck of the woods, man. What's your biggest business or personal win, would you say, so far?
Man, I'd have to count that to that Thousand Kisses record. Everything worked, like what I described to you, how it worked, and the fact that, you know, she put my name on it and put me at the helm of it and gave me that responsibility and took me on that little ride. You know, we went to the Grammys. And,
Did you allow yourself to enjoy that?
No. No, I'll be honest with you, I did not. I tried.
You tried?
I tried. And it was, you know, it was enjoyable as an experience, you know.
Yeah.
It certainly was.
You seem like you enjoy it now, though. I mean, you seem like you feel a sense of pride in it now. Yeah. So you must have, you know, your shell must have been worn down a little bit over time and let it seep in.
Yeah, and it was the biggest check I ever got in my life, too.
Good for you, man. Well earned.
That was when it was like, holy shit. So records that go out and sell 100,000 copies actually make people millions of dollars.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. I was reading an article yesterday, and there's a website called Quora, Quora.com. And it's kind of interesting because people just send in random questions, like weird shit sometimes. Like, if a cop pulls you over, do you have to do this? Or, you know, why does a guitar? I mean, it's just some of it's kind of nutty. But somebody asked the question, how much do you make if you're on Google and your video gets 100,000 plays? And if you have an all-American audience, which nobody does because the world is all on the internet, you get paid somewhere between $100 and $250. So people think they can make a lot of money. You've really got to like have 1 million plays, which will pay you $1,000 to $2,500, and you got to have one of those every month or more to make any kind of substantial money.
Dude, that's a whole other show.
Yeah. So, I mean, the fact that you were able to do that is a blessing, man.
I have that conversation with daily, you know. So I work with a lot of my friends that are, you know, doing this 20, 30 years. And it's how to figure out how that works, how to rise above the din, how to make any money when you have to weigh your music.
Doug, I'm going to ask you 2 more questions, man, and I really appreciate your time. And thank you and being so transparent and cool. What's your definition of happiness?
Man, that, you know, I think that happiness is just a perspective. But I think it's about contentment, and I think it's about giving. It's about being able to feel as if you have something to offer somebody else. And I think, you know, that's at the crux of it, is being content with yourself and your life and being able to help other people. I mean, that sounds really, really kind of, you know, like a platform type of answer.
No, it sounds really genuine. I'll be honest with you, I've not heard that.
It is genuine. I think that's what it's at, and I think and I also think it's fleeting. You say you certainly can't remain in that state of happiness indefinitely.
No, that's not real. You can't remain in any state indefinitely,
So it's at that point that, gratitude becomes a big part of it, It's literally just and that's the perspective part of it, is looking at what you do have and what you do have to offer.
Man, last question. And again, thank you so much. What's been the biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years? And has that change been intentional and deliberate, or just a natural aging?
I can't distinguish between the natural aging thing and then other things, some of the things touched upon here, certainly with the different world that you live in and children and that kind of thing. I can't differentiate. You know what I mean? Yeah. I can't. It's one thing to sit here and go like, oh, well, man, the music these days, the top of the charts, it seems like, man, I'm ready for this karaoke to be over, fall out of favor, But I've never really influenced my son musically. He listens to what he likes to listen to. He doesn't watch TV. He watches YouTube, and he's online, and he does what 15-year-olds do.
Yeah.
And he really likes rappers, and he likes hip hop, and he likes a guy named Lil Uzi Vert is this dude. And I could listen to it, and I can't distinguish whether it's just like me going, well, I don't get that. I'm not moved by that for various reasons. And then another thing to go like, well, is this Elvis Presley?
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know what I mean? Is that just the difference in time and age? So I can't differentiate that, but interestingly enough, you mentioned 10 years, and I've been sober slightly longer than that. And that was a deliberate change, and it was a very big change.
Awesome, man. Congratulations. That's a major thing. Good for you, dude.
That continues to create change, And
I'm assuming your life's a hell of a lot less stressful.
Well, it's I have some tools to make it easier to manage. I mean, you know what I mean? I feel I managed to survive some pretty stressful situations, a divorce, and, some really heartbreaking stuff that I didn't have the tools, had I been anesthetizing myself.
I hear you, man.
There's no way I would have been able to keep it in line.
Congratulations, man. I'm happy for you. That's a big thing. Man, thank you for everything. I want to just tell people where they could find you, and you're going to, and all my listeners, you're going to have to look hard, but you can't find Doug. First of all, it's Doug Lancio, Lancio. Of course, you can go check out any of his recordings with John Hiatt, with Patti Griffin. He's got
that new Gretchen Peters record just came out. It's really good. Check that out. I've made a lot of records with her. She leaves my aesthetic is all over it, for better or for worse. She leaves me to my own devices on that stuff, and she's a great singer-songwriter. That's
awesome. Check out Gretchen Peters. And Doug's a great producer. He's a great engineer. And, man, I told him he should be doing consulting because he's been around the block. So if you want to check out Doug and get a hold of him and talk to him about hiring him for any of that stuff, you can find him on Facebook. Again, it's Doug Lancio, Lancio. And he's got a really cool home studio. It's called Studio G in East Nashville. And if you want to work with him in his studio and get some of the mojo that he's got, again, reach out to him on Facebook.
Yeah, I got to say, Craig, I know it's like I don't have a website or anything. We talked about that. It's pretty pitiful, but it's just something that I just never did, and thankfully, I've gotten to work with people where I've never really felt, like a huge urge to go out and promote myself, anything like that. I've just been really lucky, but,
well, luck is a byproduct of hard work.
Anybody that actually listened to this up to this, all the way to this point, hear from you.
Yeah. Tell Doug you enjoyed his interview.
Yeah, I would just like to, I'm sure it'll probably just be people that have
You know Jerry McPherson?
I hate with things I've said.
Do you know Jerry McPherson?
I sure do, yeah.
I interviewed Jerry a long time ago, and it was like three plus hours. And Jerry goes, listen, I can't believe anybody's going to still be here. So if you do, we got to give him a prize. And I said, how about a free guitar lesson? He goes, yeah, you get a free guitar lesson. Do you know how many people have sent me emails? Man, I'd like to claim my free guitar lesson from Jerry McPherson.
I'd like to claim that.
Yeah.
Jerry's one of those people, man, that early on shared my love of a Little Vox AC-15 amplifier that I thought I was crazy.
Man, thank you for everything. I really appreciate it, man. I really enjoyed this conversation, and thanks for being so cool and so open and for sharing all these cool stories. I really appreciate it, Doug. Everybody,
thanks, Greg, I dig what you're doing, man.
Well, thanks, man. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Go support Doug and all the stuff he's doing. And thanks to him again for spending time with us. I really appreciate it. Go to everyonelovesguitar.com, sign up and get on our newsletter list. Do it now while it's fresh on your mind. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have some fun. Till next time, peace and love, and I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.